All right, Brian, we're doing a dynasty price check on Bryce Young. We have a really interesting trade here. We have a 12-team Superflex, pretty standard league. 12-team Superflex start 10, half PPR. You want Bryce Young and a 2025 first or the 103. So essentially, Bryce Young or Jaden Daniels or Marvin Harrison or I guess maybe Drake May or McCarthy if you really believe in them over Daniels. So which one you go in here? This is a tough one in my opinion.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think you gotta have to feel out the team a little bit, I guess. I'm just trying to picture like, okay, Bryce Young, basically 102 last year, or maybe 103, I guess, after Richardson. So, what does that team look like? I don't know. This is really, really close. I'd say. I mean, before I say my decision as I stall for time, I think we've talked about Bryce Young before, maybe not in one of these videos specifically, but I think people are pretty out on him a little too quick. I think we kind of talked about like maybe trying to trade for Bryce Young, like with like a late first or something, get that young quarterback who didn't have a lot going for him weapons wise or just team wise in general last year, and just trying to get him on your team on the cheap, kind of. And I think it's definitely one of those things that's kind of possible. So I think after all that said, I'm gonna choose. I'm gonna take Bryce Young in the first.
What if that first was like truly a random 20? Like it could be the 112, it could be the 101. Does that change anything for you? Does it have to be like, all right, I'm banking on this team sucking? Because if I knew it was going to be like in the top 6 picks, top 5 picks, I might lean Bryce in the 2025 first.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, and if it was past that, I might lean the 103. So it's like, obviously we don't know for sure, but you can kind of feel out teams sometimes, right?
Yeah, I think so, and I really do think that is important context to have. I mean, we're all going to take shots on guys and like, oh, this team's going to suck, so this will be a good pick, and then it's not. But yeah, no, I think that does really come into the equation here. I mean, is Jaden Daniels definitely going to be better than Bryce Young? I mean, there's a pretty good shot, right? Like he's got good weapons around him, and with the rushing upside as well. But I don't think Bryce is necessarily one to just like throw on the trash pile kind of a thing just yet. Like give him another year. They put some pieces around him in the draft. He's actually got Deontay Johnson through trade. They drafted Xavier Legette. Is it Xavier or Xavier? I always forget which one.
I never know.
Yeah, well, that guy, Mr. Legette.
Yeah.
And he's got a workhorse running back potentially in Jonathan Brooks. We knew he was going to be kind of where we all felt anyways, like there's a good chance he would be one of the top running backs going in the draft this year, and was, so I think things are looking better for Carolina, like definitely. So why not take the shot on Bryce Young?
Yeah, I mean, again, you look at the receiving core, and last year it was Thielen and Mingo is like the number 2, maybe DJ Shark. Now it's Mingo's like the wide receiver 4 for this team, Deontay, like you said, Adam Thielen, Legette, Mingo, who can still, develop. They drafted a tight end in Jatavian Sanders, who a lot of people thought was the second best, pure pass catching tight end in the draft. Went in the 4th round. So they definitely surrounded him. They got Dave Canales there, who turned around Geno Smith in Seattle, who turned around Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay, right? And now he potentially turns around Bryce Young, who again was the number 1 overall pick. Like it's easy to forget that. That being said, like in our league, which is actually a 10 team, but basically everything else is the same. I essentially turned this trade down. It was the 102, but I turned it down but also because it gave me I have the 102 and the 104, so it gave me the flexibility as okay, I'm going to get a quarterback and either Marvin Harrison or Neighbors. Like that's how my draft's going to turn out. If I give up on one of those picks, I lose out on one of those. So that kind of went into my decision making a little bit. If I could guarantee, or if I had a 70% chance this was a top 5 pick, I think I may take it, and it potentially could be. Like you said, the team that drafted Bryce Young potentially was one of the worst teams in the league last year, right? And that didn't get better with Bryce Young. So, I think I lean the 103 also because I always think about like the value and if Bryce Young sucks to start the season, he's gonna just fall off a cliff fantasy value wise. If Jaden Daniels sucks, we're gonna give him another year. So, people are not as negative coming into this draft as they are with Bryce Young. Obviously, he's already had a year, so he sucks the first 4 weeks. There goes your value. You have to you basically can't trade him at that point, whereas Jaden Daniels, you're a little bit more, insulated or covered in terms of, all right, I have a year at least, right? So
for sure.
The rushing stuff, right? Like he could run for like Fields. I don't think he will, but he could run potentially for like Lamar, Justin Fields type of numbers. Jaden Daniels, that is. So.
Oh, I was like Bryce Young, like
no. I hope he doesn't run that much. They might make him move a little bit more, but yeah, and that's gold, right? Fantasy gold is the rushing guys. So
yeah. Just real quick, I'm like scouring through the Dynasty Daddy trade database, like trying to find something else to like throw in there, and it's like Bryce Young for a 2025 second. Like, what are you doing? Like, or the 210 in this year's draft. Like, I think the point that we can learn from those is go trade for Bryce Young if you can get him for that. Like, what are people doing?
Well, also maybe we shouldn't trade the 103 for him because people hate him that much. Like, damn, like you don't want him. So again, if I can guarantee, like almost guarantee that 25 first is going to be a top 5 pick, I'll probably take it. Because we could. Yeah. It's not like it's crazy to think like, oh, like Bryce Young is having a top 12 or 15 fantasy season this year. So despite what everyone thinks.
Yeah, and quarterback 2s, 13 through 24 are very valuable in Superflex. He doesn't have to be a superstar in order to be basically better than anyone else on your team that you would start as a flex, Like, just think about the guys you're starting in your Superflex spot, and it's like, they're obviously not your, 4 or 5 best skill position players. So once you get that far down in your roster, who are you starting there that's going to score more than any quarterback, basically. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. And I always reference Tua, when it comes to like Bryce Young or, Tua versus Herbert after year 1, and how the gap was and everyone that took Tua in Dynasty drafts were like, what did I do? I fucked up, and now you look at it and I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but they can't be with more than 4 or 5 spots away from each other in the QB rankings, Herbert and Tua. So, I know we love CJ Stroud being really good affects Bryce Young. I think we talked about this before, even though it probably shouldn't, but it affects like the perception of Bryce Young. Because it's like, well, why aren't you doing it, right? Like, what the hell? So
you guys were friends.
Yeah. But again, we could be talking about in 2 years, like, oh, look, like, CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are one of them's QB8 and one of them's QB12. They're both really good for fantasy. So,
before we end this, this is like a non sequitur just because you said his name. Are you sad that the Chargers got DJ Shark?
No, I like it. They need some speed, so I think he fits. Maybe we'll talk about him later, but probably not. But yeah, we'll be back talking about another interesting one in Rashid Rice because of what's going on off the field. So we'll catch you guys in that video.